Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm gonna be reacting to a video called The Insane Rise of Polish Ekstraklasa. This is from a channel called Bosny, so check it out. I was reading up a little bit on what Polish Ekstraklasa means. I'm gonna read off this on Wikipedia. It says the Polish Ekstraklasa, officially known as the PKO Bank Polski Ekstraklasa due to sponsorship, is the premier professional men's association football league in Poland. Established in 1927, it sits at the absolute top of the Polish football league system and determines the national champion. So from what I could understand by that, that's basically the equivalent, the Polish equivalent to La Liga in Spain or the Bundesliga in Germany. But beyond that, I'm super unclear. I don't know what teams they play over there. Obviously, it's the most famous one, and it's the national one. But again, I'm very confused about what's happening there. So hopefully this video will clear some things out. So let's check it out and comment, like, and subscribe.
Only 4 seasons ago, Polish Ekstraklasa was hovering around 30th place in the UEFA coefficient rankings, behind Belarus, Kazakhstan or Azerbaijan. Despite Poland having world-class players playing for the biggest clubs in Europe, the domestic league was embarrassing itself on the European stage, losing to teams from Estonia or Luxembourg and failing to qualify for the group stages of European competitions between 2017 and 2020.
It's so weird they don't play for their own
Poland had 2 teams play in the Champions League in the 1990s, but what they didn't know is that the next time they would qualify would be 20 years later. For much of the 2000s and 2010s, Polish clubs have been underachieving in Europe. In the 2000s, the league was dominated by Wisła Kraków, who were financed by one of the richest men in Poland. They came close to European glory on a few occasions.
I hate to say it, but sometimes you need a lot of money and sponsorship to get a team where it's supposed to be.
But they always lacked a little bit of luck, whether it's on the pitch or off the pitch, as they often drew top teams like Real Madrid or Barcelona in the Champions League qualifiers. In the 2010s, when Wisła Kraków ran into financial problems, the league was dominated by Legia, but they were not dominating the Polish league like teams such as Dynamo Zagreb, Ludogorets or Celtic, who always win the league and then end up playing in the Champions League or Europa League. Legia was able to win 3 titles in a row at their best and slipped up in the league few times, allowing teams like Piast Gliwice to win their first title. In Europe, they also lost to teams like Spartak Trnava or, as previously mentioned, Dudelange from Luxembourg. Other Polish teams were not doing much better. Lech Poznań lost to a team from Iceland, Cracovia lost to a team from Macedonia, and the 2019 champions Piast Gliwice lost to Riga FC from Latvia. Therefore, when the newly elected president of Ekstraklasa said that the top 15 of UEFA rankings is his goal.
Okay, it's Ekstraklasa, because I know that I was mispronouncing that so badly. Ekstraklasa.
Many people would have laughed, but now in 2025, Ekstraklasa is sitting exactly in 15th place. So what changed? In my opinion, Poland has been a sleeping giant for many years, a country with a population of nearly 40 million people. And despite Poland being great at other sports like volleyball, football has always been the #1 sport.
Yeah, I'm surprised because I think a lot of, well, they mentioned this, but I think a lot of famous players are Polish. So it surprises me that the league, it apparently was so bad because it wasn't about talent. They had the talent.
To the 2012 Euros, the infrastructure is on a high level and there is a lot of amazing modern stadiums, which cannot be said about many leagues from Eastern Europe. There are 4 stadiums with a capacity of 30,000 or more in the top division and 2 more in the second tier. New modern stadiums are constantly being built. GKS Katowice just opened up their 15,000-seat stadium in 2025, and Górnik Zabrze are upgrading their stadium to a capacity of 31,000. And these stadiums are being put to use. In 2023-24 season, Poland had 5.8 million fans attend football games, which put them in 8th place in Europe. In 24-25 season, the record for a most attended club game was broken, and it happened in the second division as over 50,000 fans attended again.
And that's within the Ekstraklasa? That seems quite high to me. I think a lot of the, well, yeah, I guess it depends, but again, I think that's quite a lot of fans.
In between Ruch Chorzów and Wisła Kraków, the interest has been increased.
So I'm gonna go back to Ekstraklasa. I think that's the most famous team, right?
A game between Ruch Chorzów and
It's from Krakow, from what I could gather, right? Yeah, it's the Krakow team.
Wisła Kraków. The interest has been increased thanks to tickets being well priced, well-run social medias, with highlights being posted on YouTube. Due to the interest being higher, Ekstraklasa has been breaking financial records. Last season, Ekstraklasa clubs generated 1,168 million
That's a lot of money.
which is about 275 million euros. It's a 27% increase in comparison to the previous season. Polish clubs in 2010s were selling their best players for around 5 million euros maximum, but those numbers have increased thanks to good performances in Europe. Ekstraklasa sold 5 players for 10
I am going to assume that's only going to keep going. It's going to keep increasing.
million euros or more in the last 5 years. Because of revenues increasing, Polish teams have started to spend more money. Record purchase by an Ekstraklasa team was 1 million euros for Maciej Żurawski in 1999, and it stood for over 20 years. But this record was beaten 3 times in the last 5 years, with Ruben Vinagre currently being the most expensive purchase ever at 2.5 million euros. Raków especially isn't afraid of investing money, as they spent 10 million euros over the last 2 years. Polish teams scored some points in 2021 and 2022 seasons in the Europa League, but I have to admit that the addition of a third European competition helped, as the majority of the points scored by the Polish teams were in the conference.
I've never heard, I admit, I heard of the Europa League, but the Conference League, I don't think I've ever heard that one.
League 22-23 season was the catalyst of the rise in the coefficient rankings, as Lech Poznań went all the way to the quarterfinals. But the season didn't start well, as they got destroyed in the first round of Champions League by Karabakh. Lech had to go through 3 rounds of Conference League qualifiers, which they managed to do. In the group stage, they were a bit inconsistent, but they eventually managed to finish in second place thanks to a huge 3-0 win in the last match day over Villarreal. Lech then beat 2 Scandinavian teams in the next 2 rounds, Bodo Glimt and Djurgardens, before eventually losing to one of the better sides in the competition, Fiorentina. But it was a great run that helped Poland to jump up to 24th place in the ranking. Next season, Legia followed them by also qualifying for this competition. They did this in a thrilling fashion after firstly edging out a Kazakh team Orda Basy 5-4 on aggregate. In the next round they played Austria Vienna, and after losing the first leg at home 2-1, they had to make a comeback in the second leg. Legia started the game amazingly, winning 3-0 after 60 minutes, but they started slipping up after that, and the Austrian team got 2 goals back. Legia scored in the 87th minute, but then conceded again in the 97th minute, which meant that the game was going to extra time, or it would have if Legia didn't score in the 100th minute to win the game 5-3 and the tie 6-5 on aggregate. Danish side Midtjylland was waiting in the last game, and this game was also eventful, finishing 4-4 on aggregate, with Legia winning the penalty shootout 6-5. In the group stage, they drew a Bosnian side Zrinski, as well as AZ Alkmaar and Aston Villa. The highlight of Legia's story in this tournament was definitely beating the English side 3-2 at home. Legia finished second in the group, just behind Villa, and qualified for the knockout stage, where they were dismantled by Molde 6-2 on aggregate. Nevertheless, Polish League again scored some points and moved up to the 21st place in the ranking.
Everything counts.
For the 24-25 season, the goal was to get close to the top 15 and attack in the following year, but what happened was something that nobody, even the most optimistic fans, would have expected. Jagiellonia, the surprising champions of 2024, had a low coefficient score, which resulted in them being drawn against tough opponents. First Bodo Glimt in the Champions League, and then Ajax in Europa League. They lost these matches but ended up in the Conference League anyway. Legia qualified for
7-1, well that's
Conference League
something.
for the second year in a row, after knocking out a Danish side, Brøndby. That was a huge result, as Denmark was one of the countries competing with Poland for a spot in the top 15. The second division side, Wisła Kraków, surprisingly won the Polish Cup. There was not much hope for them to go far, but they did surprise Polish fans by knocking out a Slovakian side, Spartak Trnava. Wisła was 1 round away from qualifying to Conference League, but the level of Cercle Bruges was too high for them. The same goes for St. Gallen, who knocked out Śląsk Wrocław. However, 2 teams playing in Europe again was a good result, and those 2 teams continued to perform well, both getting 3 wins from the first 3 games, which resulted in them sitting at the top of the table next to Chelsea. The results were not as good in the second part of the league phase, but Legia still managed to finish 7th and Jagiellonia 9th, with the highlights of the league phase being Legia's victory over Real Betis and Jagiellonia's win over Copenhagen. In the round of 16, Jagiellonia played Cercle Bruges and got revenge for Wisła Kraków as they beat the Belgian side 3
That sounds so dramatic, as if they had a vendetta, personal vendetta against them.
2 on aggregate. Meanwhile, Legia was also looking to take revenge on the team that they lost to last year, Molde. And the first game went just like the first game last year. Molde got 3 quick goals and then Legia responded with 2. However, the second leg went differently as Legia overcame the odds and knocked out the Norwegian side 4-3 on aggregate after extra time. The other results went in Poland's favour, like Chelsea knocking out Copenhagen and Celje knocking out Lugano. These results meant that Poland would finish in the top 15. Something that seemed impossible a few years ago was accomplished.
Yeah,
in the quarterfinals, Polish teams were against the big teams, Chelsea and Real Betis. The 2 future finalists proved to be too much for the Polish sides, but they didn't go without a fight. Jagiellonia managed to get a draw in the second leg and lost 3-1 on aggregate. Meanwhile, Legia won at Stamford Bridge, but lost 4-2 on aggregate. And fun fact, I actually attended this game. I think the appearance of Raków pushed other teams to do better. In 2014, Polish businessman Michał Świerczewski took over his local team, Raków Częstochowa. At the time they were in the 3rd tier, but they climbed the ranks through smart recruitment and patient project building under coach Marek Papszun. They got promoted to Ekstraklasa in 2019, and just 2 seasons later they were fighting for the championship.
In 2021 he won his first major trophy, winning the Polish Cup. It only took him, 6 years?
Polish Cup. Many Polish teams would end up selling their best players after a good season in the past for a quick profit, but Raków had the financial backing which allowed them to keep their best players and improve. Over the last 5 years, I would say Raków only sold 3 of their key players, and they were all sold for good money as well, one of them even equaling the transfer sale record. The difference with Raków is that they never really had an embarrassing loss to a team from a smaller league. In their first season, they beat Rubin Kazan in the qualifiers before losing to Ghent, who are not a bad team. In their second season in Europe, they lost in the playoff round to Slavia Prague, again not a bad team. In their third season, this time in Champions League qualifiers, they beat Karabakh and Aris Limassol on their way to the playoff round, where they narrowly lost to Copenhagen. They got to play in Europa League, where they ended up finishing last, but again, none of the teams they lost to were bad teams.
Yeah, of course, you have to check out the competition, and I think the important part is to improve.
Atalanta ended up winning the Europa League, Sporting won the Portuguese League, and Sturm Graz beat Red Bull Salzburg to the title that season. Another turning point was the rise of modern Polish coaches. New managers embraced progressive tactics, including high pressing and positional play. Marek Papszun, at the age of 41, started his journey with Raków, which is still going on to this day, 10 years later. But we can find even younger managers in Ekstraklasa right now. After coming to Poland to study at the age of 20 and working as a video analyst and an assistant manager, Gonzalo Feio worked his way all the way to becoming a manager of the biggest club in Poland.
Video analyst? But wait, that's in sports? Because what does that anything? It doesn't have anything to do with football, but maybe it's video analyst. As in, I don't know, the bar thing or in sports?
Poland at the age of 35. Adrian Siemieniec, who achieved with Jagiellonia their first Ekstraklasa title and a quarter-final of Conference League, is only 33. The manager that replaced Gonzalo Feio at Motor Lubin, Mateusz Stolarski, is only 32. There is also Dawid Szwarga, who managed Raków during the 23-24 season, who is 34. He won the second division with Arka Gdynia, so we will be seeing him in Ekstraklasa again next season as well. As previously mentioned, there isn't one team that Polish fans would expect to see in the Champions League every season, like Serbian fans might expect with Red Star Belgrade, or Croatian fans might expect with Dinamo Zagreb. However, there is a few teams that are on Europa or Conference League level. The league was won by 4 different teams in the last 5 years, and all 4 of those teams qualified for European competitions.
Well, but I like it because it's open. It's sort of anyone's game, really. You have to see what's your season is like this year. But also, again, they're all good, apparently, so that's great.
At some point in those 5 years. There is also Pogoń Szczecin, who are like the Polish Spurs. They never won a single trophy, but they have been hovering near the top in recent years, despite financial problems. In 2025, the club was taken over over by a Canadian millionaire who paid off the debts and promised to invest more into the club. Widzew Łódź, a historic club that...
Why does a random Canadian have to do with Szczecin? What's up with that? Maybe his family was from there?
Played in the Champions League group stage nearly 30 years ago, also have new owners who want to invest around 5 million euros in the summer transfer window, which is big money for Polish football that should move them up to near top of the table.
Okay, this was very interesting. I think what really goes to show is that you actually need people that want to invest in something. Obviously, this is about sports, specifically football, but I think maybe this could technically apply. No, I think it only applies to football just because of the nature of how the sport really works and how the league works, specifically in Europe. I think it's about not specifically. I think sometimes you think, oh, but this country, like they mentioned, Poland's a huge country. So you probably would have thought, oh, but don't they have in a country that's so big? Don't they have people that that know how to play football? They must have good players, good talent there. But I think specifically, it wasn't necessarily about talent. It was about and it wasn't specifically about as fans, people just do not really care for sports. Well, in this case, for football. No, because they cared about football before this. It was more about the investment and probably how aware, probably people weren't that much aware of the Ekstraklasa. Oh my God, he makes it sound so easy to pronounce every time I try. My brain wants to go somewhere else. Ekstraklasa. So again, people were maybe not. There was not a good incentive probably to go to those games, and because maybe again you think, oh, they're bad, so why would I go? Or maybe again the tickets were expensive, so why would I go and A, check out a team that's really not that good, and B, it's going to be expensive, because sometimes I think people don't really care about paying a little bit more. But if you're really you're watching the game of your life, or you're watching one of the greatest teams ever, you don't really care that much about money. It's what I would assume. But I think one of the actual other aspects of this is how available after the new owner, apparently he seems to be the one that actually turned things around, the new Ekstraklasa owner, which I think made it so, I don't know how old, because they were also speaking about the coaches and how young they were, but I would assume also this made an impact. The fact that he was probably a little bit younger, maybe he actually realized what the things, what the steps, there were some steps that need to be taken in order to sort of improve the league and to make it so, to grow it basically. He was growing, it's sort of like a plant, you plant something, you plant, an apple tree, and then, you actually germinate your seed, and then, you grow it out, and you have to nourish it, you have to put water in it, you have to make sure that it gets the sunlight and whatever and all that. So again, it's a really step-by-step process. It's not something that happens overnight, no, and it really does depend on a lot of factors. But I think it's really important that you know what you're doing. Of course, you need to have a plan. It's not as if you're throwing things at the wall to see what works. No, it's sort of, I actually analyzed this, and obviously he was the new owner. He probably has his own, I would assume, of course, he also has, this team of people that also work alongside him. And they created a plan, and they maybe again, like they mentioned, they wanted to achieve, I think, to be in the first, their goal was to be in the top 15. And again, it happened really quick, which, great for them. But I'm thinking probably they weren't expecting it to happen, that quick, because I think, again, you made your own sort of, you project things, your own projections, and let's think realistically, because again, this is not going to happen overnight, because there are a lot of changes that needed to be done. But ultimately, I think it all boils down to money. You need to invest money. That's really, I think it's one of a sad little thing, probably, because sports should be, sports in general, and in this case, football. If you are from a country that, again, as in this case, Poland, that's really, everyone's a fan of, football is really, it's a popular sport. It kind of sucks a little bit, in my opinion, that, but you need to invest a lot of money. Obviously, we're not thinking, in a random average person level. No, I'm thinking companies and millionaires and all of that. They really do have to invest a lot of money in order to grow a sport, which I think is a little bit sad. There's a part of me, I understand why it's done, because again, without money, you can't build the stadiums. You can't really afford the players. The players, and the talent will leave, as they mentioned, because they have really good, again, they have really good talent. That if you don't have the money to afford them, they're just going to leave to other leagues, they're going to leave to other countries. So again, it's sort of a sad situation. I understand that's really how it works, and that's how it works, I think, everywhere in all the countries and in all the leagues, that you really do need to invest a lot of money. So that's bad. Well, it's not bad, but I think it makes me a little sad, because what happens is when there's a lot of talent in one country, but no one wants to invest, because again, it's about all those billionaires, millionaires, and all those big companies. What happens if they just do not want to invest? I just think, again, not the case of Poland. Thankfully, they actually managed to turn things around. But I'm wondering about countries that haven't actually made it so. And, they're in the same case of Poland, how it was 20 years ago. But, you need people that want to invest, which I think is the key. And you need to find probably people and millionaires from that country that actually want to, no, we want to improve this, because we want to see, our own league to be competing at an international level and winning, the Europa League, or what was the other? I can't remember the other name. But again, you want to see them sort of, on an international stage and in winning those big leagues. At this point, I think in time, they're focusing more on, obviously, on growing the league and on classifying, and see if it's the classification is probably, it's an award enough and great, because they're just starting out, it's starting to improve, it's starting to grow. But I have no doubt that in the next, probably, I don't know, again, I don't know what their projections are, but in around probably 3 or 5 years, this is gonna be small for them. We don't want to classify, our goal is to win, because we are there, again, maybe right now they're not specifically there, and like he mentioned, they were competing against other teams that have been investing a lot of money historically into this. So I think it's not, it's not like it's not like you mentioned, it was shameful. It's no, you're not going to be embarrassed. It wasn't embarrassing, to lose against a team that's, technically a little bit better than yours. Again, not about talent, but just about the amount of money they invest, and historically how much, how much money and effort they've put into this. It's not an embarrassing situation. It's not really bad. It's sort of where I am. You have to meet people where they're at. So again, this is the same. In this particular time period, well, yeah, this is good. We lost. Well, yes, but it's fine. I was expecting that to happen. But again, give us a few years, and then in a few years, probably you'll start to see how the whole classification thing, it was great for a while, but now we are really at the level of, we're actually competing, as in we're competing to win, and we're competing to win this whole thing. And I have no doubt that's going to happen in probably more, sooner than I think, because I was mentioning how I believe these things take time, but sometimes they take a little bit, maybe a little bit less than I think. That I think it's all going to depend. I think probably your own projections are going to be better. To manage expectations, I think it's just better if you assume, it's going to take them a little bit more. And then if it doesn't take that long, it's, oh my God, it's great, right? I think it's best to manage your expectations. I think that way, something good happens, then, I wasn't expecting this, so great. I think it's a great mentality to have. But I really, one of the things that I was going to say as well, is that with the whole investing of the whole money thing, and obviously they found people that actually wanted to invest. There were Polish people that were, yes, we want to invest in our own country's league, and we have the money. We have money to spare, and I want to invest in sports specifically, which is great, amazing, incredible. So again, they invested in the stadiums and the building of the stadiums. That apparently also, I think it was the Euro, I think it was the Euro Cup, that they actually had to build the stadiums because they were the host and all of that. So, great. And probably they did it thinking about this as in, yes, we're going to be the host, but that's, because stadiums are an investment. And you build them for one specific, in this case, for one specific championship or one specific event, that it's, it's something that's going to pay off in the future, because again, it's a really big investment that you're making and that you're doing, again, and being the host of this international event. But then, the stadiums are going to be there, and it's good because, again, it's an investment that's going to pay in the future because the stadiums are going to remain, and all the infrastructure that you build, in order to, all the training camps and all of that, they're going to remain in the country, which, again, you have to think about things in a little bit of a long-term situation. Which, okay, yes, great. But what I was about to say is that besides that whole sort of infrastructure thing, I think about the fans. I think about the fans as well. Because, again, a sport, and specifically I think football is such a thing that I think people are so passionate about. And if you're a fan, you're so passionate about this. And if you don't historically maybe have some ties to this and you want to, I want to check out a game. I want to see if this is my thing. I want to see if I like this. Then, how do you do that? I think it has to be affordable, and it has to be, the availability has to be, quite wide in order for people to get excited about this. And that goes, again, for grown adults that they check out a game, they was love at first sight. Now I'm going to start following this team. I'm going to start follow the Ekstraklasa. Or for kids as well, because I think you never know if a kid, actually sees the sport, you take them to a game, and then, or her, or whatever, you take them, and then it was, oh my God, this changed my life. I imagine a lot of people would say this. Oh yeah, my parents took me to this football game when I was, 6 years old. And then, I fell in love with it. And then I wanted, I asked for them to, I want to start playing this. And that's how you build talent as well, but you really do have to create the interest. And that interest is not going to be there if there's no, nobody knows about, there's a team, there's a match happening. No, if people don't know that, obviously they're not going to be, they're not going to make an appearance, and they're not going to take their kids, they're not going to make the effort. And of course, the money. If it's so expensive, people are not going to go. You have to put available, the prices have to be, not out of this world. People have to be, they're thinking again, because I think maybe I'm wrong about this, but I think if you have to put, I think you have to really add people that are a little bit on the fence. You're not thinking about the hardcore fans, because the hardcore fans they're going to pay either way, but I think they're not the ones that you want if you're trying to grow the sport. I think, and in this case, the league. No, you kind of want things to be a little bit wide and a little bit more available to kind of, you want to add people that are a little bit on the fence about, oh, should I check out this game? It doesn't seem that interesting. It seems boring. I don't like it. I don't know, whatever reasons people may have. That's kind of how you grow it. You create interest by, again, they mentioned social media, by, letting people know there are actual matches happening in your city, or, in a city nearby you, in a town near you, so you can actually go. And again, their tickets are not expensive, so you want to check them out, go and see, it's great. So I think, again, incredible work by the new president of the Ekstraklasa. I think this seems like a really good case. It's a case, it's a study case. You can actually see, the results were incredible in a short amount of time, and you can actually see, if your league is maybe a little bit bad, maybe again check out what they did, and check out what this guy did, because he did an incredible work and job in what seems to be, to me, a record amount of time, because I wasn't expecting things to be, and it's such a fast turnaround. And again, you have to also bring new blood, because all those coaches and all the technical team, all of them, I think, were under 40, which I think seems crazy to me, because I always associate sort of the coaches and all of that with, I think, older people. But maybe that's just because, again, that's probably what I remember seeing. I just think, people aren't you supposed to be a little bit older because they have more experience and all of that, but not necessarily. Sometimes, you need to bring a little bit of fresh blood that understands how things work and how the sport is evolving and has evolved. And maybe it's a little bit of a new school situation versus old school, but apparently the new school pays off. So investing in new blood and in fresh blood, apparently. But that was it for today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.